All right, I don't really know what I'm doing, but we're live now, so let's just go into it.
Okay. Hello, everybody.
Hi, welcome back to our Wednesday Night Live on Unbridled. It is Carly here with our lovely guest, Greg, with part three.
Part three. And Genevieve is out of town, away.
She is out of town on business currently,
Okay.
so she's got her full time, big time job that has called her away from us. She did bring all of her equipment with her just in case she'd make it, but then she just texted me this afternoon and was like, they booked meetings until the end of the night. So,
Uh,
yeah.
well, that's too bad. That's too bad.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, hope everybody's had a good few last weeks since I've been here. I feel like I've been on the show a lot, and I appreciate that very much. Um, we had talked about some driving stuff, and I felt like we didn't get all the way to the end of it. And then I also wanted to talk a little bit, if we had time, about if you're going to go out trailer shopping, some things to think about. And then if you're going to sell your trailer, also some things you can think about. Um, and we'll get into that. I'm wondering if anybody's watching yet, and maybe not since we just started, but did anybody try my wheelbarrow technique of backing your wheelbarrow?
I'm curious to know too. I honestly haven't taken my trailer out at all since we've talked about this.
Uh huh.
Um, and I'm almost scared to now for some reason. I've got like this little, I don't know, a little bit more fear anxiety. But the usually I just have to like rip it off like a band-aid. You just get in and you
Yeah.
trailer like everything's fine. But I've been trying to make a habit of every time I take my trailer out, make sure I take it to my uncle's first because he has a big old air compressor. And then I make sure all the tires are at the level that they're supposed to be before I go out. Because I'm usually, when I take the trailer out, I'm driving at least an hour or two one way. And so I just haven't taken it out in a while because I've been busy with other podcasts.
And that's an interesting thing that you say because it's very easy to look at your trailer. Come here, Zeke. Hop up here, buddy. Come on. Hey, sit, sit,
Puppies.
sit, sit. I want to, if I can. Oh, there you. Hey, buddy.
Look at him.
Hey, dude. Here, come here. There he is.
Oh, hi.
This dog, I swear. Oh, hello. He's going to give me the paw.
He's
This
big.
is the sweetest dog. He is just the most gentle, wonderful soul,
Oh,
and he just loves his dad, don't you, buddy? And we have a great time together.
he's
Now,
so cute.
there you go. All right. See you later. Um, but sometimes you can look at your trailer or your truck and go, "Oh, the tires look pretty good. They don't look flat."
Hmm.
Um, I just rotated tires on my truck, and the rear tires are 80 pounds, like maximum, which is usually where we keep them for towing and all that.
Hmm.
And I was putting them on the front, so I would lower them to 60, and then I would pump the fronts when I moved them to the back up to 80. Anyway, I was even surprised to see that when I moved one of my backs to the front, it was only 65 pounds. So it has a slow
Oh,
leak, but you couldn't tell by looking at it.
gotcha.
And where that gets you is when you're towing and you're putting a lot of weight on it, and the sidewalls are squishy, they heat up. And when they heat up, then you have tire problems, your tires blow. So it's really, really hard with trucks and trailers to look at your tires and feel like they're okay. And even if you have tire pressure monitoring, which your cars have and a lot of your trucks have, um, it's worth checking them. And I going all the way back to Christmas when Genevieve was asking what's a good stocking stuffer. I never mentioned a really good tire gauge, but it's something
Yes.
everybody should carry. And the Milton makes like a nice truck gauge that goes to 100 pounds,
That's nice.
so you can use it on your bigger trailers and trucks.
Yeah.
Um, that's an easy thing to check to maybe prevent having a problem down the road when you're traveling because you just can't tell by looking at them.
Now, I have a question for you. Tommy likes the digital tire gauges, and I don't know how I feel about those. And I don't know if it's because I don't trust technology, but how do you feel about digital tire gauge versus the kind where you just like release the button?
Um, Honestly, I don't like them, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
The tire gauge that blows the little stick out or even
Yeah.
has the little ball inside that turns, that's all the um, technology and stuff that I need. When you add digital transducer to it, all you're doing is taking what that little stick would already tell you.
Yeah.
Then you're running it through more electronics, like you're saying,
Yeah.
to create a digital image. So that point of failure can be in the digital part of it.
The device
I
itself.
just yeah, keep it simple, right? Yeah.
Right. Okay, that's
Uh,
how I feel. Okay, good.
and you get these gauges, they kinda crack me up because, like the Milton gauges, they'll be some of them are like a stick and there's 4 different printed sides,
Mhm.
and they have PSI and KPA and all these different international things. So you have to turn it and figure out which is the one I really want. But like mine is like a nice brass, um, indicator, not plastic,
Yeah,
and they're made well, and you're talking about an inexpensive item. None of this stuff a an
right.
$8 tire gauge versus a $28 tire gauge is worth buying something really good that's accurate and using it.
Yeah,
And I know it's an inconvenience and you may not have air where your trailer is, but those are the simple preventative maintenance things. Sometimes I'm attaching a bridle and I'm fighting with the buckles and the keepers and I'm like, "Can I just kinda half-ass this?" And it's like, "No, not really,"
no, no.
'cause, you can end up having something break or you get hurt. So it's the same thing with the tires. Take the time to yes, Kenny, actually, yeah, I think maybe you missed like the first part when we started, but yes, um, what happens is the sidewalls flex, they get hot, and when they heat up, then you have the sidewall failures, and sometimes with tires can separate. Like, have you ever seen those big? They call them road gators, but like the big treads that are on the road from the tractor trailers. Those are actually glued on retreads. But the point of it is your tire can separate or delaminate, and pieces go flying. And a lot of that's from the heat from the sidewalls being kind of squished and building up tremendous heat. So yeah, you want to have them up, and as we talked about in one of the earlier episodes, I tend to run my tires near the maximum because that gives you a nice stiff sidewall and the less chance of generating heat, and you're not gonna hurt the tire by being at what the manufacturer would tell you is the highest it can be. And I'm really kind of, to back that point up, here my GMC truck, empty. It says to have 80 pounds in the rear and 60 in the front. Well, 80 is the max
Mhm,
for the tire, but that's the way they want you to drive it even if it's empty. Now,
mhm.
some people will lower it to 65 or 70 when they're not hauling loads, and it does ride a little better and the tires wear a little bit better. But the manufacturer doesn't give you 2 choices. They don't say 65 empty, 80 loaded. They just say 80. So
Yeah.
I recommend that. We back in the day, and this it's so funny. Younger people are so spoiled by all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive, but I can remember even in our town, which it snows a lot, I can remember getting in my Suburban in the '80s and driving doctors and nurses to the hospital.
What?
They would put a call out to anybody that had a four-wheel drive to please help shuttle first responders to where they needed to be,
Wow.
because that's how rare, if you go back to the '80s and the late '70s, that's how rare four-wheel drive was, and all-wheel drive didn't really exist in any major form.
Yeah.
So with that comes a bit of driving experience because we all drove two-wheel drive sleds that spun all over the place. And what I was getting at with that is one of the tricks that we would do is lower the air pressure in the rear tires a lot
Okay.
because it gets you that soft, squishy sidewall and
Okay.
it helps get you grip in the snow.
Mhm.
And then radial tires came along and a lot of that changed. But yeah, that was an old trick to try to get a little more traction in your crappy little Chevy Impala or whatever, was to actually lower them. And so Kenny, yeah, you're spot on with that. Um, one of the things that actually I think Kenny might have even asked about in the beginning, and I said we would talk about it, and we got away, and definitely this is part of tonight is, but I don't want to go out of order. But we're going to talk about snubbing brakes and the proper way to drive in mountains when you're hauling your truck and
Oh,
trailer.
mountains. Okay. Okay. I'm all
Right,
for
which
this.
is yeah, it's kinda foreign to a lot of people that live in certain areas, but we live in the mountains, and so I'm gonna get into that, but before I do that, the one thing I did wanna talk about, kind of trying to stay in order, was, and if anybody wants to answer this, I'll ask the question, I'll wait a minute and see. When you hook up your trailer to your truck, do you set the parking brake on your truck? Even on flat ground?
Like like when I have my truck, I back it up to the trailer hitch and then I get out of the truck and then I hook the trailer up to the trailer hitch. Is that what you're talking about? Do I
Yes. At
put
that
the
point,
parking brake
you set the parking brake. And
on?
let's assume you're on flat ground, like the errands or places where or troop run, it's not really hilly.
Well, I'm assuming that you're gonna say that you're supposed to put the parking brake on, but I'm gonna tell you right now, I've never thought to do that.
Okay. I'm gonna give that a minute to cook and see if anybody else wants to chime in. And, um, just because I mentioned it and I know Kimberly thought it was interesting, I'm gonna ask if anybody did the wheelbarrow thing, and this is me demonstrating using a wheelbarrow as a trailer and me as a truck, and
Ugh.
there's sound, but I'm not gonna bore you with the sound. Um, I'm pushing like I'm a truck,
Yeah.
and now when I turn into the door, you see how I swing out?
Oh,
Now
yeah.
I demonstrated that time what happens when you turn early, and I hit the thing on purpose. And the demonstration there was to go back and watch your rear wheels, and as soon as you are clearing, and then you pivot, and then you're easy breezy. If you're a very new driver, I mean a very new driver, that wheelbarrow thing will help you because your body's going like your truck needs to go, and you know. So just one of those things that is kind of interesting to play with. Um, so I didn't get nobody chimed in yet on the parking brake thing, but let's talk about that.
Kenny said that his parking brake is
Ah,
broken, so he doesn't set it.
okay. Um, Let me tell you why it's important to do it. Um, Especially if you're on a hill or on a slope, but and I would also say especially with gooseneck trailers.
Okay.
So you got your ball. Here's your ball,
Mhm.
and here's your hitch.
Mhm.
And on a gooseneck especially, you line up perfectly, but as the gooseneck comes down, sometimes it no longer centers. Depends on how high. I'd put my goosenecks up high to let the rainwater drain away from the living quarters. So I'm
Mhm.
purposely jack it up a lot. But the point is, there's a lever that sometimes will cause it to do that. So here's what happens if you don't have a parking brake on and you're bringing it down. You might have seen it do this. It pulls on the truck. Have you ever seen your truck move a little bit when you're hooking up?
Yeah, I have.
Okay. Bumper pulls, not so much, although it can happen, especially a heavy bumper pull. My lightweight bumper pulls, if they're not lined up, I lean between the truck and the trailer with my feet and I just push, or rock the truck and make it fall.
Right.
But the point is that tension, right, of the ball not quite being centered and then leaning in,
Mhm.
if it's putting force on your truck, there's a very good chance it will break the parking gear. We're going to call it a parking gear. There's a more official term, but it can break the parking gear in the truck because you're putting all that force onto the transmission, right?
Oh.
Even if you have a stick shift, it can put enough force on the transmission to break something internally like a gear. Um, it's a tremendous amount of force sometimes
Mhm.
that it's leaning in and it's not exactly right. So something has to give.
Mhm.
What you want to have is the parking brake set tight so the give goes to the trailer side. And you'll know when that's happened when you're on flat ground and everything's cool and you load up and you can't get the wheel chocks out without beating on them with something. That's
Mm.
telling you that the force of that hookup got transferred to the wheels and the chocks are holding it.
Yeah.
Um, you much you really want to have that happen versus the truck being pushed in a really bad way or pulled and
Okay.
all of that weight going on the transmission gear itself.
Okay.
So please lock that brake. And if you're off more than half inch and you see it coming down and it acts like it's forcing,
Yeah.
then raise it up a hair, move the truck a little bit to where you know it's supposed to be,
Mhm.
and then finish. Don't force it. A lot of times balls will hop on. They will. They'll hop on and they'll move a half inch, three quarters of an inch, an inch. But when they're hopping, something's being moved. Either the trailer's being rolled or the truck's being forced.
Mhm.
And I really, really recommend not putting that weight on your truck. Um,
Interesting. I feel like I've
yeah.
I've never heard that before. Like, Like, even my dad, like, telling me how to, hook the truck up to the trailer, and I guess it's kind of like I know also my dad, like, he likes to, be very efficient with his time. Bing, bang, boom, look how fast I can do this kinda deal. But and I feel like that's just one more step that you should definitely take to ensure that your truck lasts forever.
Well, in the drivetrain, there's a chance of breaking the parking gear. There's a
Yeah.
chance of breaking a universal joint or stressing a universal joint enough that then it becomes clunky sooner and goes bad. Um, there's stuff in the rear end that usually isn't gonna break, but it's just the concept, if you really don't wanna put that kind of stress on your transmission when locking the parking brake, will either it will force it onto the trailer, and if it won't hook up then, it's time to move the truck,
Mhm.
and not try to complete that. Um, with bumper pulls, it's a little bit different because sometimes there's even slop in the hitch itself. Like, when you put it in with the pin, so now you're lowering the bumper pull on it, and it's all just kinda wiggly, and
Okay.
sometimes you can push the truck a little bit. I've
Yeah.
had them where they're not quite straight, and I'll just rock the side of the truck, and it'll go, "Bleh," but I
Yeah.
wouldn't do that with a gooseneck because I also don't wanna put that much stress on my gooseneck hitch. A lot of those pop-up hitches that come out of the bed have a pin through the ball,
Yeah.
and they'll get sloppy after a while if you keep doing that where the ball will be all rattly because you're
Okay.
forcing it's not designed to take that kind of force.
Okay.
So I recommend people do that. Set your brake. If your brake doesn't work, you can put wheel chocks on your tires. So Kenny, you could block the truck tires temporarily. Um, you might learn depending on where you hook up. I keep my gooseneck in a building in a shipping bay, but you have to go up kind of a ramp to get to it. So my truck is at a really funky angle when I'm loading the trailer, and there's always a lot of movement. Um, but you'll learn where maybe you throw the chalk in front of the truck wheels or behind. You learn after a while, what are you trying to stop, or put them in both. But you really want to transfer that force to the trailer or reset your truck.
Mhm.
So that's one. Um, I think we covered most everything else about hooking up and that kind of the trailer plugs and all that
Oh,
kind of
interesting.
stuff.
Kenny says I usually put my truck in neutral when I hook up since I'm on flat ground and that works quite well.
Yeah, and that will eliminate what I'm talking about. I didn't wanna put that out as a recommendation because there's too many variables for people.
Yeah,
Um,
if it's not flat,
like,
flat
you
ground.
put it in neutral, you get out to lower your thing, and for one reason or another, your truck decides to roll away. I mean, lea exiting the truck when it's in neutral, I mean, I do it with my farm tractors all the time, and we do it. We all do it, but I didn't wanna make speaking of that, before we go any farther, the following discussion may include my opinions based on personal experience, which should not be considered direct advice. Please rely on the manufacturer's information and or your chosen trusted source. So I'm not telling you to put your truck in neutral and get out and hook up your trailer. What Kenny's saying absolutely works, especially on flat ground and especially even maybe on gravel, where there's a little bit of resistance to rolling. But you have to be well aware of that potential rollaway issue when you're doing it. But yeah, Kenny, that takes the stress off the truck. You know, just remember before you pull your chalked wheels to get back in the truck and put it in
Put it
park
in park, yeah.
or in gear if it's a stick before you take away all sense of braking that you have. But yeah, can be done.
Oh, I
Better
love it.
better than beating on the transmission with the weight of the trailer.
Cool.
Um yeah. So if nobody else has much else to ask or anything about trailer hooking up, I wanted to talk a little bit about the driving stuff. We got into a lot, but I because I'm doing this off the top of my head with no notes and no real framework, I'm missing a lot. And then I after the show or the next day, I'm like, oh, I can't believe I didn't mention that. I should have said that. And one of the things that I think is important for people to think about is, especially if they're not used to the mountainous areas, if you live in the flat and then you start going to, Center Hall or some of these places, you're going to deal with hills.
Yep.
And we live in the mountains where truck brake fires and runaway trucks are almost a daily occurrence. And it's actually gotten worse since the Pennsylvania Turnpike has raised their rates. A lot of these tractor trailers are using our interstate to
Try to
save
go
money.
around it. Oh my gosh.
And I don't really have a lot of visuals for this. I didn't have time to put them together, but if you follow me through this and think about it from a mechanical standpoint, you wouldn't think that a truck driver who does it for a living, who hauls all over the country, would end up having, a runaway truck with faded brakes and a brake fire.
Right.
But there's a couple things that happen that if you don't know the terrain and you don't know the area, and after you've made the trip once or twice, you learn. In our area, we have 7 and 9% grades, which are bad. And when you see that sign, it says, 7%, 9% next mile or whatever. You can get through that and keep going and everything's cool. Our grades start like 24 miles from here and they don't stop. And what happens is these guys that are over the road drivers that aren't used to being in our neck of the woods, they start hanging on the brake going down the first few grades. I
Oh,
guess
no.
assuming that they're going to have a chance for the brakes to cool at some point, but it never ends.
No.
You go down one and then another
Yeah.
and then another. And we're kind of at the end of it in our town after 17 or 24 miles or whatever it is of continually trying to hold the truck. And by that time, the brakes are shot, they're smoking, and then they're no good. And we have a lot of accidents, truck brake fires, truck rollovers, just
Oh,
craziness. And it's because the drivers are not respecting the fact that if you have to brake to get down a steep hill, you need a chance for your brakes to cool. And if you don't know the terrain and the environment that you're in, and you don't realize that it just cumulatively keeps building. You
yeah.
heat them up and, "Oh, man, gotta do it again, gotta do it again, gotta
That's like
do
my
it again."
biggest fear is my brakes going out on me as I'm going down a mountain or something. And you and I both know that that drive to Center Hall, Pennsylvania, which is the competition grounds we typically go to on Genevieve, hi!
I'm so
You were
glad to
able to
see
join us
you.
from her hotel room.
Hey guys. Yep, I'm
Yay!
up here in Hudson, New Hampshire.
Ooh.
Oh,
And
no.
yeah, I know I'm up here for business. It's actually not as bad as you think. So for all the people up north, I respect you.
Right?
What's the
I
weather
know,
like up
it's
there right now?
It was funny yesterday. So I was thinking about driving and I had to go to a dinner and I went to take a left and I realized there was like a 14-foot snowbank that continued on for 4 lanes. Ended up in the
Ah,
wrong lane of traffic trying to avoid the snowbank.
oh my
Yep.
gosh.
It literally flashed through my head though. I was like, if Greg was here right now, he would be so
Yeah.
disappointed in me right now.
He'd be able
That
to coach you
that
through it. You would have been perfectly safe.
Dude, I think I told you guys the story about one day Lucy gave me this big hug, and I'm like, "What's that for?" And she said, "I was driving down somewhere on a wet road on an exit ramp, and I lost control of my car." And I'm like, "What would Daddy say? What did Dad tell me to do? What did he tell me to do?" And she
We love
said
it.
she was able to gather it up without hitting anything. And I'm like, "That's cool. I'm glad it paid off." The
It's literally, we
discussion
need a
of,
bumper sticker, Carly. That's what would Greg
What
do?
would Greg do? Yeah.
yeah, right.
Drive like Greg. Make Greg
Right.
proud.
Well, and hey, and Jen, while you're talking about that, and I don't want to derail it, but no, this is really important because there's another thing I thought about that we didn't talk about. We began to talk about driving in ice and snow and slipping and sliding, and I'm a big believer that you need to experience that in a safe environment. You need to experience your and do it in your truck or whatever is the worst traction thing you have. And I took each kid out and made them drive in the ice. I took my four-wheel drive Xterra and I put it in two-wheel drive, and that thing is a pig in two-wheel drive. It will not go up hills. But I made them, it's going like that, and I made them try to get to the top of the thing, and there were a lot of tears involved. Some of them were mine, but the idea was that I wanted them to know and how to correct on a private piece of property rather than be going down the road and all of a sudden it breaks loose
Exactly.
and you're like, I don't know what this is. And I have I think a good example of that. Jen or Carly could tell me, either of you could tell me everything I need to know about sitting through the most hellacious, violent, angry rear that a pony might do, or as Jose would call it, Thursday. And but until I experience that for myself, I'm not probably going to remember half of what you told me.
No, you're right. Yeah.
But after I go through that a couple times, Tucker bucks now, and I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, that was something, right?
Yeah.
And rearing is always an interesting thing for people that have never, and I haven't been on a pony that rears much. So I worry about that. So it's like that with driving. You go out on a day where it's a little slippery, you find a nice big parking lot, and you do little maneuvers to try to make the car slide a little bit, so you understand the things that it takes to correct it. What we did was we'd go behind one of my properties where we have a long straightaway, and it was snowy, and I'd say drive it to like 25, 30 miles an hour, slam on the brakes and turn the wheel all the way.
Yeah.
And it would just keep going straight.
Yep.
And I'd like, now go around again, and let's, like, we're not even going to talk about ABS and all this stuff because that's not legit for what this discussion is. Same thing again, slam on the brakes, turn the wheel, then start modulating the brake. Start taking your foot off the brake. It's counterintuitive. Why do I want to take my foot off the brake? I'm sliding. Take your foot off the brake. As soon as those tires start to rotate, they hook up. And as soon as they hook up, they start doing their job, which may be turning, it may be braking. But a tire that's locked solid is nothing. It's a shoe. It doesn't do anything for you at all. So you learn, you're driving, and all of a sudden you're turning and you hit the brakes and it's going straight, and you stand on the brakes and you hit that utility pole. If you had the wherewithal to say, wait a minute, I remember this. I need to get off the brake and let the tires roll and slow down, but just try to get the tires to do something. A lot of times you'll avoid what you're going to hit. You learn that in parking lots. You don't learn that the first time, when you're out.
That's a really good thing for us to think about next time there is some weather and you have maybe a younger driver even coming up, is get to a parking lot, get the experience underway. Yeah, because that's huge, especially someone with a trailer. Like, you don't realize it, but there's going to be a day where you go and it's perfectly fine weather and you school your horse and you load him up and you start driving and boom, it hits.
So the game Keyhole, which ironically we actually played not too long ago, even though we normally don't. When I used to teach down at Summit Point, we had our own version of Keyhole, and it was a cone, and then a cone in the middle farther down. And you would have drivers come at it at like 50, 60 miles an hour, have them slam on the brakes, and then you would tell them where you wanted them to go around the left side of the cone or the right side of the cone. You're going into that box and you don't even know yet which way you're supposed to go. And then we'd go left.
Wow.
And the only way to do it is to let go of the brake and have the car hook. The only way to do it is to let go of the brake. You're already sliding. You're not doing anything. And that taught, in fact, I was behind my building the other day and it snowed, and the FedEx guy was coming up the hill and I was plowing and I was flying around, not expecting him to be there. And I hit the brakes and started sliding, and I was ready to hit the guy, and I started going pop, 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 pop. My plow truck just turned out of his way. But I had to, my instinct was just to get off the brake.
Feather it.
Yeah. There's this thing called threshold braking, which is like you brake right before the wheels lock.
Okay.
And then but you don't give it enough to skid, but you give it enough to let them, and you learn that.
Right.
But I was just like, my initial reaction when the truck started going straight was to just start doing this to the brakes, and it did. It just came right around. I'm like, that's cool, But I think a lot of people
on the podcast,
right? Actually, I have in-car. I should go pull it up, see if I have in-car video on my plow truck. I should see if it's there. But the cool. idea was, I knew it. I knew what it was. Like when we ride, you know what that is. You can feel it.
Yeah.
Right. And so I strongly recommend that. And I would, if I was ever around, if we're ever at the Grange and we have an ice storm and we're all bored out of our minds, we'll get some driving done. If we can't ride,
I love that. I think that's a great idea.
And I'll give some tips, because I love teaching it, and it's so important, and it can save you from so much, because you've been there and you know what that is, and you've got the confidence to deal with it.
Yeah.
I watched a guy coming down the road, and I'm walking up the sidewalk, and he slammed on the brakes, and I'm looking at him, and he's headed right towards this utility pole. He's trying to turn into a Taco Bell, and it wasn't turning. The guy was only doing like 20, 25. And I'm saying to myself, get off the brake, get off the brake, get off the brake, get off the brake. And he just plowed right into the pole. And I just thought, he just had never experienced it.
You don't know until somebody actually intentionally teaches you. And there's just people out there who just don't have that guidance,
Yeah.
Yeah. And so where that, not that we're out sliding around in our horse trailers and doing all that, but you remember I told y'all coming back from Three Clovers the other day, my truck kind of kicked on
Yeah.
me in the rain. I'm like, whoa, it happens. It happens on gravel. It happens a lot. So if there's ever an opportunity, and you're not like going out there like Joey Chitwood trying to flip the car and all that, you just want it to break loose and then kind of learn how to bring it back. And don't cheat with the all-wheel drive BMW with the traction control and all this stuff. You got to get out in the pickup truck. You got to get out in something that really is gonna break free, and you're gonna have to correct. I've never understood. I'm going to ask you all this question. What do you have? What do you think about when somebody says, "All right, you skid"? What do you do to come out of a skid?
What do I think?
Is anybody going to give me the classic answer?
Don't you turn into?
I bet Carol Ann would. If Carol Ann's listening, I bet she knows what everybody's been told over the years.
Know what to do.
Carol Ann
You
would
mean
know
what
this.
to do or what we've been
What
told?
to do? What do people tell you? Well, what do people tell you to do if you skid?
Like you turn into the direction that you're skidding?
Or something?
See, I don't even know what that means.
I don't know what that means either, because if I'm already going that direction. Carol Ann's here. Hi, Carol.
Hey, Carol Ann. So they say turn into the skid. Okay. Yes. But I never understood what that meant, because if I'm looking at the windshield and I'm skidding this way, this is what Carly was beginning to say, because if you're skidding and your front end's going to the left, what they're saying is your back end's going to the right, steer into the back end. But who's thinking about the back end when they're watching their life flash before their eyes in front? Right. So all the years that I've driven, and people will say, turn into the skid, turn into the skid. And I'm thinking,
right.
I've got an easier way to remember it from my racing days. And if anybody's ever gone boating or done anything, point the nose where you want to go. Okay. Like simply, if you're skidding to the left and you're going, oh, that's guardrail's not where I want to go. Right. I want to go back to the road. Right. Keep the nose pointed, right? Mm-hmm. Where you want. Don't worry about the skid and what the back end's doing. Try to point the nose. Exactly.
It's like riding at the front end.
It's all about
front of the back end. Yeah.
It's all about the front end. Don't think about the skid and turning into it. Because I'm telling you, sometimes I think there's something wrong with me, because I've heard that for many, 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 many years, and I've never understood what people are talking about. And in racing, if you lose the car, you point the nose where you want to go. You point the nose where you want to go. Yeah. Simple as that. Maybe with riding too, you point the pony where you want it to go.
I overcorrect.
The back end is going to follow, hopefully, right?
Kimberly has a question. Jen and Carly, I sent you an image for Greg's opinion. Greg, the 2-horse trailer got a new emergency brake line. The image, if we can get it to show, yes, is in the incorrect position, attached to the chain, not the hitch. It looks too tight to me. Is it true, or is it because the wire is new and not relaxed yet? Okay, hold on. I have the picture.
Let's look at the picture. Is it a cable, or is it one of those curly?
I don't know if I'm going to be able to show it to you. Oh, yeah. Okay. So you can kind of see it. See the red cable right here?
Can you full screen yourself? Or Jen, can you full screen her?
I don't know. I'm on a cell phone. Let's see.
Oh, okay.
Solo layout. Boom.
Okay.
Well, you can
is that a cable, or is it one of those curly things?
It's a curly thing.
Now the curly things stretch like crazy. I put a new one on mine, and I'm like, that looks really short. And I tried everything to get it to pull out of the pin, and it just kept stretching.
Carly's face is so intense behind the picture.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, right. No, the curly thing will be short. And if you grab part of it and pull, you'll see like another foot easy that curly thing will open up before it yanks the pin out.
So you don't think it looks too short?
No. And remember, when we talked about, they want that thing to pull if the hitch comes off the ball.
Yeah. And
so that's like what, 5 inches? Yeah, right. It's not going to pull that early. No, you're good. You're good. Right. And those coily things really do have a lot of like those, like you buy like a little like maybe a cell phone charging cord that's curled. It's like this long, and you
Yeah.
pull it out, and it's like 6 feet. It's kind of like that. They do pull out a lot. But thank you for doing that, Kim, because that's the right thing to do. Somebody just sent me a picture tonight, and I think I'm sadly going to have to tell her that her cable is wrapped up inside her chain, and more than likely she's listening. So I haven't looked at all your pictures to try to come up with an idea if you're overloaded or not, but I think I saw your chain running through your cable, and we talked about that. You don't want
Womp
that.
womp.
And unfortunately, you'll have to go back and watch more the earlier episodes to catch all because we were all over the place. But
Okay.
so Jen, what we were beginning to talk about. Go ahead, Carly.
Let's
Go
go
ahead.
back to the
Yeah.
mountains. All right. I need to
Yeah.
know,
Right.
how do we break down a mountain? And I don't know if
Okay.
Genevieve needs a recap.
So we
You're
were
good.
talking
Don't
about how
recap. Just keep going.
well just living in the mountains, and we have like 24 miles of grades. And these tractor trailers are constantly, the brakes are catching fire and they're wrecking and they're all this stuff. And part of it is you see a sign that says 7% grade and you think, okay. Well, what you don't realize is it accumulates over how many miles. There's a grade and then a grade and then a grade and a grade. And you never get any relief. You never get any way to let those brakes cool because you're always doing it again. That's why, again, a lot of people don't go near the mountains, but around here, if you go out towards West Virginia, there's mandatory stops where you have to pull over. Every tractor trailer has to pull over, come to a complete stop, wait, and start again.
Wow.
That's your way of knowing your brakes work because those hills just keep building. And a lot of times there's little small towns at the end of those hills, so they really don't want tractor trailers blowing through these little areas. So if you're maybe you live in I don't know, pick a spot that's flat, and then you come up to the Grange or whatever, and you got to run a few mountains to get there.
A few. Yeah.
It can be something different. So the first thing you need to think about when you're driving and you're using your brakes is to preserve your brakes, and you kind of have a heat budget that you have to be aware of. You can't just keep hanging on them and hanging on them and hanging on them and hanging on them because they just get warmer and warmer and warmer and warmer. Actually, I don't know how many people watch things like NASCAR or whatever, but on those ovals, they're always talking about the brakes and how the brakes get so hot because they just get on those brakes so heavy. You got to give them a chance to cool because you're coming back around again. You got to get back on them again. And you see these brake rotors glowing red and catching fire. The really good drivers know how to preserve their brakes. They know how to use them in a way that it doesn't build heat that you can't get rid of in a fairly quick time. So when you're towing, it's a little different than your passenger car. Although being a mechanic, I don't like putting brakes on cars. So I'm not one to ride brakes down a hill anyway. Mm-hmm. I don't just want to use them that much. I don't want to have to replace them that much. There's a few ways you can preserve your brakes and save them and not have your truck run away. Obviously, if you're driving a good hauler that has the tow haul mode, you put it in tow haul mode, and that changes the shift points on the transmission. So if everything's working like it should, you give it a little bit of brake and the truck will downshift for you. And you're transferring that braking action from the brakes to the truck's transmission. Okay. I call it dynamic braking, which is kind of right. It's really a locomotive term.
With grade braking, I was just about to mention how loud it gets for us because we have an older truck and it gets extremely loud when it downshifts, I guess.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Especially on the diesels, you don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
Because all that, and if the truck is fairly new, it's all programmed by the computer that's sensing your grade. It knows how steep of a grade you're on. It senses how much brake you're putting into it. It knows your speed, and it's not going to let that engine, and mine will do it. My diesel will get up around like 3,500 RPM, which is like almost in the red. But I trust that thing is programmed properly to let me do that.
Okay.
And there's nothing I can do to make it better because it's automatically making those changes. If I give it a little bit of gas, it may shift. It's really called an upshift. It may shift up and drop.
Okay.
As soon as you let go, it's probably going to drop again anyway. Like it's all in the programming of the vehicle. On the older trucks, it's a little more hit or miss, but a lot of the older trucks don't have the tow haul mode anyway. It's those Allison transmissions. They're just wonderful. I mean, if you use it properly, we have a really, really steep hill, and I can start down the hill with a 18,000-pound trailer, and I tap the brake, I tap it again,
Mhm.
and I'm going tap tap, and it goes, whoop, whoop, and then it sits there at 65 all the way down the hill, and my foot. Sometimes I feel like I have to give it gas to keep it going
Okay.
because
Okay.
and I'm not touching the brakes at all.
And that's
Like
normal.
it,
That's good to
yes,
know, because I
and
really don't
that
know.
And so you want to rely on that. And when you're coming down a steep hill, your mind may think you're speeding up, but look at your speedometer, look at the traffic around you. You may not be. You may be instinctively. You ever get behind those people in the little cars, and every time there's a turn in the road, the brake lights come on, and you're
Yes.
thinking, why? Well, visually, hey, there's a turn, I better slow down. But really, from what you feel in the car driving, you don't need to do that.
Mhm.
It can be that way with the truck, and it's the way I ride Tucker. I'm always hanging on his mouth because I need that reassurance, right? I need to let go and just let him do his job. It's like that with the brake pedal too, right? You're
Mhm.
you're kind of going, oh, I better brake. Oh, we're going down a hill, but um,
We were talking about our brake cord with Rochelle.
oh yeah, right, okay.
I'm
Um,
not trying to click things, I swear. I'm trying to
That's
get a bubble to
distracting.
go away. Just ignore me.
but so your mind may tell you need to throw some brake on, but actually your truck is taking care of you,
Okay.
especially with a diesel with a tow haul, and if you have the engine brake or the exhaust brake,
I don't
which
know
a
what
lot of
that
the
is.
GMs and I don't know what other models, but like my GM has an exhaust brake. You hit it, it's kind of like the poor boy version of the Jake brake on tractor trailers, but
I
it
was gonna
uses
say, is that
exhaust.
GM like specific? Fords wouldn't have that, right?
I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. I know GM does. I kind of think that Dodge might. But the exhaust
Dodge
brake is
probably
cool
does.
because it uses exhaust back pressure to help put in some braking into the drivetrain to help keep your foot off the brake. And honestly, if I'm driving that truck through the really heavy mountains empty, I'll throw it in tow haul mode going down the hill, hit the engine brake, and let it just brake me down the hill, even though I'm not hauling anything. Again,
Okay.
I don't want to have to put brakes on it. Let it do the work.
Oh, okay.
Um, so, but how you protect that heat budget or that brake budget?
So with newer trucks and grade braking, even when it gets loud, are
Exactly.
you saying do not press the brake, just let the truck
Right.
do its job? Mhm.
Yep. Yep. That it's not gonna it seems like it's crazy, but the transmission will shift if it has to. It will upshift and take you out of that if it has to. Um, just
Oh, Carolyn.
let it do it.
I had
Let's
an
see.
incident last weekend with my trailer driving out of the forest preserve. I stopped at a stop sign. The trailer brakes were insanely touchy, as if I were at the highest setting. I feathered the brakes up and down while the wheels squealed and released until we stopped, clearly only using the trailer brakes. My brake box said we were on 1.0. I went ahead and adjusted the box anyway, and it seemed to work correctly after that. I later stopped and went to the plug and the bottom seam.
There's more.
Dot dot dot. Apparently, she's typing more, I think.
Um, she couple things. We talked a while ago about brakes being having a lot of moving parts inside. She may have had a brake lockup. Something
Oh,
may have sprung the brakes on and they weren't able to come off. It
okay.
almost sounds like she was dragging her brake and creating a tremendous amount of heat.
Mhm.
Assuming that the brake shoes aren't down to the metal, which is also where that squeal would come to if they're just flat worn out. But
Oh,
it almost sounds to me as if the brakes came on and didn't come off. Um, and she was dragging them around. I don't
mhm.
know, Caroline, if you come back, if you could feel that if could you really feel the trailer pulling back on you like you're trying to slow you down? But that sounds like a brake lockup. When you get them really, 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 really hot, they can do that, but usually they fade and they get worse. They don't lock. But okay,
She said there's more up there, but it stops
that's where
here.
we
The
were.
bottom seam. Dot dot dot. That's all I got, Carolyn.
Let me go
Apparently,
on Facebook and see if I can
yeah. Facebook might
find the
show
rest of it here.
the full comment.
Um,
That's a good point. Do, 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 do.
let us see. Um,
That's
one
a good
comment.
point. There
Oh,
we
Katie
go.
Dawson. So I'm not on the live comments on Unbridled.
Hold on.
Oops.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. All right. Okay, okay. I think I found it. Last mile before getting home, I slammed on. Okay, so I stopped. Okay, here. Later the stop. Later stopped and went to the plug, and the bottom seemed a little loose. Then, the last mile before getting home, I heard a slapping noise while applying the brakes and turning left. I thought a tire was flat, so I stopped. No flat tire. I got back in and drove home. Any thoughts?
Okay. The slapping sound. Okay, so one thing you want to do is remember we talked about grabbing that tire on top and shaking it. Make sure your wheel bearings aren't loose. You got to do that. But it sounds like something might have come apart inside the brake housing itself. There's springs that can rust and break. There's a few moving parts. So if I were driving and it did that, my natural inclination would have been to get out and put my hand on the wheel and the tire, not the tire, but the metal wheel around the brake hub and see how hot it was. Linda Ahrens one time had a problem with a wheel bearing, and we drove it around for 15 minutes. I got out and I put my hand on one side and it felt good. I put my hand on the other side and I almost burned my hand. And I'm like, your wheel bearing's done because you shouldn't have that much friction heat coming out. So that test might work to see if you had a dragging brake. Sometimes you could smell them too. You know, you ever get behind I don't know if you've ever seen a truck with smoking brakes, but it just smells like asbestos and it's horrible stuff.
Amari Connor says, or emergency brake problem.
Potentially, yeah. Same idea on the older trucks. They're mechanical brakes that have a lot of moving parts. But I don't know if Carol Ann was saying it felt like, or she thought it was coming off the trailer. But definitely it could have been the back of the truck.
Yeah. She says the trailer brakes were insanely touchy, as if it were at the highest setting.
Now, when you say the trailer brakes were touchy, do you mean squeezing the lever on the brake controller or just applying brake to the truck?
She said it drove fine after the one braking issue. That's a good question.
I mean, I've seen crazy things happen that are really unlikely. I've seen pieces of gravel get stuck in places that you wouldn't expect and cause a problem till the gravel grinds itself out and it falls out. Mm-hmm. But I would have those brakes, both sides checked. One, to make sure they weren't the problem, and two, to make sure they weren't damaged in this, whatever this was. If they check out perfectly clean, and a mechanic can tell you whether that brake shoe had been, or the drum had been hot, because there's a glaze that happens to them. They get really shiny and like really cooked, and really you could still smell it days later anyway, when you open them up. So I would have both sides checked to be sure. The way the electric trailer brakes work, it's hard to the only way you can put too much power on the brakes and make them lock is if the pin pulls out of your emergency brake battery thing. But it's almost unlikely that your truck is going to cause your brakes to lock up like that if you have the controller set in a reasonable fashion. So definitely I would pull all four and make sure they're okay.
Tommy says my truck has over 250,000 miles on it. It's a gas engine. What's the probability of getting into 350,000 miles, or should my wife buy me a new truck? FYI, it's 2009 Ford F-150, and that sucker has seen the war zone.
Yes, Carly. Tonight. If you're going to drive the truck like that, you have to drive that truck the same way. Poppy, you got to drive that truck the way you're going to drive Poppy in 28 years. Different than you're riding her today. Yeah. Okay. And you kind of have to do that with the truck now. Now you're at a point where things have enough wear on them that you've got to be gentle. And there's more maintenance to be done. Universal joints, wheel bearings. Hey there. And things, so that you have to understand that you're not driving something new, right? Every little thing. And when you get to those miles, things that you wouldn't think might break, like if you have an accelerator cable, like the cable that it's just been doing this for so long that eventually the cable breaks, or door hinges, and latches start to go. Like all kinds of things happen to the body and the mechanics of an older
Oh,
vehicle.
yeah. Well, our
You
windows
know,
have stopped working, our heat and our AC no longer works. We don't have fans anymore in the truck, so we can't defrost the windows. It's
yeah.
going downhill fast, and I'm like,
I
"Honey,
think
you
what
have
he's
to be
saying is, Greg, can you
gentle."
give my wife permission to buy me a truck?
I
He
already
wants
told her tonight. I'm like, do it,
he
do
wants
it.
to know.
As soon as the show's over,
I've been
you know.
shopping for months, and he won't listen to me.
But yeah, it's a different thing, and they you can get a lot of miles out of them. But when people say, "Oh, a diesel will go 500,000 miles," well, the engine will, but
Yeah,
the chassis and all the different components have to be kept up with.
right.
And if it's had an easy life, then that's great. But an example of sometimes what happens, people will go out and buy like a state highway truck or a construction truck because they can get them cheap. That's fine, but you have to be prepared. And even if they go, "Oh, this had a maintenance program because it was a state highway truck," they let them go either by age or by reliability. If you
Yeah.
go to your local school board and you buy that truck on the back lot, that's because some guy couldn't get it to start and it was costing them more money to pay the guy to try to start. We're just getting you a new truck.
They've been
So
abused. Mhm.
yeah, and
Yeah.
there's some really good deals out there, but you have to have that understanding that sure, it's a great deal, but I got to keep up with it. And I have a friend not too long ago. She had one of those, and I won't mention who she is, but she had one like that. And then a couple months later, I saw her with a new truck, and I never really asked her why'd you jump from that to the other one? But
Mhm.
I have a feeling it's because didn't feel like she had reliability, and it was a fleet truck of some sort that she had, and it wasn't a bit. It was like a 150. Like she was pulling a little bumper pull, but she made the leap to like a Duramax diesel and all that. And I think it probably just was like, yeah, I need something more than my auction truck or whatever it was.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, have you ever bought a vehicle from auction? So when I was in Phoenix, because corporate stuff in Phoenix, one of the guys was like, "Yeah, I bought my daughter an old cartel car because it was like in a drug bust or something. And when they bust them, they then take the cars and they can be perfectly functional or classic cars or good trucks, and then
I
they
am
auction them
s-
off." And
I
he
am
was like,
so
"Yeah, my
glad.
buddy
Okay,
goes to all the auctions and then just pulls like, the good vehicles that he can resell." And so he ended up getting like this really nice Corvette for like nothing.
I am so glad that you asked me that question. I gotta get in the right album because there's a
So
story
random.
there's a story that I wanted to tell you guys, and oh man, now I gotta find this picture.
Thomas
And
also wants to know what the best truck to tow a boat and a gooseneck would be. I feel like we have that truck, Thomas.
well, all right. So I'm really partial to diesel.
Yes,
I'm
we agree.
and it may not be your daily driver. There was a time when diesel fuel was cheaper than gas, and it seemed like a really good deal to drive the hauler around. Alice drove her Duramax diesel as a kid hauler for years, going to the grocery store and taking the kids to school in it. The diesel was cheaper than gas, and we didn't have any money. All we could afford was one vehicle, and we decided to buy the horse trailer,
Yeah.
hauling vehicle. Um, Point being, turned out to be a really dumb idea because we put a couple 100,000 miles on a truck going to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Where if had I thought more about it, I would have bought a beater for her to drive the kids around and that. But point being, if how many vehicles do you want? If you're going to buy a purpose built vehicle, you're buying it. Really, you're buying a diesel if you can do it.
Yeah.
Go ahead and read that. I'm gonna.
Tommy says, you haven't lived until you've worn 6 jackets in a vehicle that won't defrost while you're driving to the gym at 5 in the morning, praying the sun won't cross the horizon and blind you indefinitely. Beautiful, Thomas. Beautiful.
Um, Character building.
Yes.
I've got to find this picture because I want to tell you the story about
I need to know about the
my
cartel truck.
my drug vehicle. Yeah, I want to tell you about my
Need
my
to know.
drug vehicle. Okay, I got it. All right. You're going to think there's no way this story is true, but it is true.
Okay.
So I'm on eBay looking at 4-wheel drive, like Xterras, Pathfinders, whatever. I wanted something to plow snow with. And I find this Xterra, and it was the Garrett County Sheriff's Department, which is only like 30 miles, 40 miles up the road. And they were selling a drug seizure Xterra on eBay. I'm like, well, I'm going to bid on it. So I bid on it, ended up buying it. And, you know, you're buying it knowing it's probably doesn't even run, right? I mean, they don't know. They're not going to promise you anything but a title. And knowing that the vehicle could have been stolen, could have been abandoned, could have been a seizure vehicle, but it was an auction vehicle. So I bought it, and I didn't have a trailer at the time. So I called a friend of mine. I'm like, can I borrow your car trailer? Now, he towed a Porsche 914 to the racetrack in this little car trailer. And in the front of the trailer, he had a big tire rack over top to put tires on, and his car would slide under the rack so he could get the car all the way on the trailer. So I went to pick it up. I'm like, that thing's going to hold my Xterra? Oh, yeah, no problem. Okay. So the sheriff's department is on this hill, like this crazy hill, and this parking lot is like this and like that. And the thing's parked there, and I went in and paid for it. And I come out and I get my trailer. And I go to load the thing on the trailer, and it won't even, I mean, I could barely get the back wheels on the back of the trailer. But remember, we talked about how if you don't get it on enough, the trailer is all springy in the front.
Yeah.
The trailer was all springy in the front. Like literally, I can't drive it like that. But I couldn't get the Xterra was too high to go under the tire rack. So I couldn't get it fully on the trailer. Took it off, turned it around, thought maybe I could back it on and the weight would be different. That didn't work. Turn around, put it on front, took the spare tire off of my truck and put it on the tongue of the trailer that I'm towing to try to get some tongue weight on it. Stacked another tire on top of that. I was going to just get enough down on it just to get the thing home. Or at least get it down to the local Lowe's and buy some cement bags or something to try to, right? Nothing. Didn't have anything. So he comes out and he's like, problems? I'm like, yeah. I said, I need some kind of weight. I need some kind of ballast on the front of this thing to try to get the tongue down. I can't even leave your parking lot. Like literally, it will leave. It will. He's like, anything you see out here, you can have. I'm like, okay. I'm walking around looking, and there's really not much. And there's this old utility pickup truck, old green, nasty, like, you know, road crew truck. And I look in the back of it, and there are two broken in half, vandalized granite tombstones. And I'm like, those things have to weigh a ton, right? So I go, can I have them? He goes, yeah, we got them off the road. Somebody vandalized a graveyard and threw them out on the road. And they're like, yeah, you want them? They're yours. So these are
Oh, wow. You're
tombstones. He had like a little, like a toolbox type thing in the front, and then like this open container for gas cans. So I grabbed those things and threw them in there. And I'm telling you, that one is probably 350 pounds, and the little guy's probably 200. They were so heavy.
Holy moly.
So I slapped them in there, and the trailer went down on the ball, and I'm like, we're solid.
Okay.
I drove the thing home. People were kind of looking as I was going down the road with my tombstones in the. I still have them. They're great ballast. I throw them in the back of the Xterra when I'm plowing snow because they really weight.
I was going to ask you if you still have them.
Yep.
You could be cursed.
Is there a name on them? Do we know who they are?
It's a Mield, like Nield or something. Mield.
And the other one, honestly, I don't have a good picture of the other one, but it's in my garage down at one of the buildings, and it's leaning against the wall. And kids, just close your ears for a minute. But it's Anna L.
Anna L.
Genevieve got it.
I got it.
And I'm like, seriously? I think I need to turn it around. But you really can't. Born in 1928, I believe she was.
Yep.
It's on that one.
Or Anna L.
Anna L.
Now.
But it's really funny. It's funny to me how everybody has stories, you know, and it's funny to me how sometimes things work out in the most unusual ways, you know, and the butterfly effect or whatever comes into play, and you're just kind of like trying to do your thing, and then some random other thing comes in, and So anyway, yeah. So my answer is yes. I bought a drug vehicle,
Did it
and
work?
yeah. I mean, I had to do some stuff to it, and I still use it. I use it for plowing snow. It's great.
You still have
It's
it?
small.
Oh,
It gets into Yeah. I've had it a long time.
cool.
Um, but getting back just to the braking thing, because we went. Whoa.
Yeah. Ooh.
So you're in the mountains, right? You're in the hills, and it's called snubbing brakes. And what you're doing is you're giving a little break, and then you're coming off for a minute, and you're giving them a chance to cool, and then you're coming on, and you're coming off. It's not like driving a passenger car where you just ride the brake all the way down the hill with a little bit of pressure. You shouldn't do that anyway, but people do. They just gas, brake with no mechanical understanding of what they're doing to their car.
Mm-hmm.
It just the right foot go, left foot stop, or
Yes.
left pedal stop. So when you're towing, you give a little bit of brake and you come off, you let it cool, you give a little more and you come off. If you do that, you can prevent a lot of the brake overheating problems and the brake fade, because you're putting in the brake a little, not heavy, but enough to make it work. And then you're just coming off and giving them a chance to cool. If you think mechanically, I need to let my brakes cool, then you get into snubbing. And most of the crashes that we have around our area are drivers that are just used to hanging on the pedal to the bottom of the hill. But what they don't understand is there's another hill and another hill and another hill and another.
Yeah.
So brake snubbing is a very easy habit to get into. Think about it this way. And I'll never forget the woman who was on the equestrian Olympics who said the hardest thing to teach is the release. So you guys, right? What are you doing? You're snubbing a lot of times. You're not, right?
I keep thinking about the applicability when we think about training horses, and we tell people not to just hang on a horse's face because they lose the sensitivity. It just burns it out, right? And then the whole time you're talking in my head, I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what we're teaching people. Like, give and release is the only thing that keeps the sensitivity.
And the take is when you need it, not when your brain's set. Like with me again with Tucker, I rode him the other day on a trail, and my thing was, I'm not touching him unless he does something that needs correction. I'm not hanging on him. I'm because he gets mad, and I'm like, and I've gotten better, and you guys have helped me a lot because you give me pointers, and I think about it, and I think, okay, but it's the same thing. It's it brake release, go a little bit brake release, use that tow haul mode, use the transmission. I want to throw this out, and I won't answer it, really talk about it, give anybody a chance. Does anybody have an older vehicle that maybe just has like no tow haul or any of that, but just has overdrive? And we're going to talk about what overdrive is and then how it helps or doesn't help in towing. But does anybody have just a vehicle like old Suburban or an old pickup truck that doesn't have the tow haul? It just has overdrive.
I wonder how old you have to go back to do that, because like mine's literally a 2005 and it has tow haul.
Probably like late 90s and into it. And I mean, and I'll talk about overdrive in a second, but yeah, so there's a reason why you don't see that as much anymore. So you're snubbing brakes on hills. The other thing you're doing is you're watching your speed and you're looking ahead. Remember how we talked about you're always looking 2, 3, 4, 5 cars ahead. So if you see somebody 5 cars ahead putting on their brake and you lift, by the time you get to where they are, you may not need your brake. You may never have needed to touch your pedal anyway.
Thank you.
So don't be that person looking over the bumper of the car in front of you and they touch a brake, you touch a brake. They touch a brake, you touch a brake.
Not necessary.
In racing, we always say, what's your car actually doing? And in riding, it's what's the pony doing? What is the pony telling you it needs, right?
Yeah, right.
It's the same thing with that. So, I mean, I drove from here to three Clovers the other day, and I might have touched the brake pedal once or twice. Wow. I don't. Wow. I'm buzzing along, and if something's going on ahead, I lift and I kind of let the truck go into its little thing.
Yeah.
And then that clears itself up. And all that is from people really looking over like not paying attention, looking up and realizing, now I got it,
Yeah. Kenny says my Suburban has a tow haul button and it does not let it into overdrive until it's like 65 if it's engaged.
Yeah. And what happened to Jen? Jen's gone.
I don't know. She disappeared.
What what you found with the older vehicles was that they didn't tow haul hadn't come around yet, so you had the overdrive. And a lot of people are confused about what overdrive really is, because like in songs, they talk about slam it down into overdrive and all
Yeah.
that. That's not how it works. Let's see. Go ahead.
Well, Carol Ann just says, I grew up in Illinois flatland and glazed my trailer brakes the first time, snubbing down a mountain. Learned real quick to use the transmission. Oh.
Yeah. Snubbing is better than hanging on the brakes, but on some of the real bad hills, I mean, yeah, you still burn up that brake budget.
Mhm.
But in general, driving, especially on the East Coast, snubbing is your friend versus hanging on it. So overdrive is not like some super speedy gear that makes your truck suddenly magically faster, And like I said, there's different songs where they go, kicking into overdrive and all that. Well, overdrive was kind of invented during the gas crisis of the 70s. And sort of, I'm kind of paraphrasing it, but because they were looking for a way to get higher mileage out of cars. And what overdrive means is that your drivetrain is rotating faster than your engine is spinning, which is the exact opposite of normally when you're driving, your engine revs up and your car, like in first gear, your engine's buzzing and you're barely moving. In second gear, you're moving faster. And third, with overdrive, the drivetrain is turning quicker than the engine's rotating, and that allows for better fuel economy. It creates problems with heat, which is why I wanted to get into the idea that really when you're towing, you should not be in overdrive. Even if the vehicle comes in and out of overdrive on its own,
Yeah.
sometimes it will hunt and it will just sit there and go, you're starting up a little grade. It's like, just take it out of overdrive. Don't let it do that. One, you're just beating it to death. Secondly, overdrive has like no pulling torque at all. It's an overgear design for like flat level or downhill, so that the vehicle can go a little bit freer without the engine holding it back.
Okay.
But you don't need that with towing. If you're going down a hill, you don't want that free spooling overdrive. You want overdrive off so that the gear actually, whatever that next highest gear would be, probably third gear on some of these. Some of them are 4-speed overdrive. You want that gear to work for you. And overdrive kind of is designed to free up that drivetrain. And it does cause vehicles to run hotter, especially if you're putting a load on them like towing. Not to get into all the mechanical geeky stuff, but the reason why a lot of these vehicles have what's called a clutch fan, like in the old school days with a fan on a radiator, you couldn't turn it because it was locked to the engine with a belt. Now they spin. I don't know if you like, they have a fluid in them that allows them to spin. That's because of overdrive, because in overdrive, the engine's turning so slow that the fan's barely moving. So they let them run free, so the air through the radiator will help the fan spin faster. Like it decouples.
Okay.
It decouples. So otherwise you would overheat.
Hmm.
In the towing world, overdrive, there's hardly any use for overdrive at all. And if you have a vehicle with overdrive and it is doing that hunting routine where it's kicking in and out, take it out. If you think you're anywhere near hills at all, take it out. You burn a little more fuel, but you'll have a little more power. And when you let off the gas, it will feel like it's braking with the engine.
Okay.
So not overdrive and towing now. Tow haul mode absolutely is good, and it can be your brakes if you learn to utilize it properly. I mean, it really can really keep you from having to be on the pedal. If you experience brake fade, if like Carol Ann was saying, if you just get to the point where you're buzzing along and everything's good, and still you start to feel your brakes fade, you've got multiple ways to stop. You have your transmission. You can let off the gas and begin to slow down. If you know your vehicle well enough, you can notch it down a gear to slow it down even more. Right? You can use the hand controller on the brake for the trailer gently when you're doing that to help slow it down. I'm talking about where you're suddenly afraid that, hey, I may not have brakes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Lift. As it slows down, gear down, gently apply the trailer brake, but don't slam on the trailer brake, but just gently apply. And you can go from 60 to like 35 in a fairly reasonable amount of time. Use the hills as your friend. Another thing about braking in hills, if you're coming down to the bottom of a hill and about to go back up, maybe you let it run just a little bit on the way down. If you have the old truck, you need that to get up the next hill, right?
Exactly.
But you just kind of take advantage of Mr. Gravity and you say, well, I'm just going to go ahead and just let it, because the hill's going to slow me down and I'm not going to have to touch anything.
Kenny says I actually use overdrive when pulling the trailer, and when there is a slight grades, the torque converter unlocks, and then it downshifts to OD to third. I never had it hunt yet.
Correct. And if you get on certain hills, it will hunt. My motorhome hunts like crazy. So I just notch it down till I get to the top of the next big hill, and then when I'm starting down, I put it back in overdrive, because I don't need the extra braking with the motorhome. I'm not pulling a trailer. Like it's happy, but Kenny, you're lucky it's not hunting, and it may be that your vehicle and the way it's designed, that it's not as sensitive. My ambulance had overdrive. It never really seemed to hunt either, but I felt like it started dogging really bad, and I would just take it out of overdrive and it would perk up to the next gear.
Why did you own an ambulance?
When I was racing, I needed something that I could haul a little bumper pull trailer with that had a lot of storage space, and I wanted to sleep in it. So the cool thing about ambulance is all the outside compartments. Like there's just a ton of cabinets and stuff. So I could put all my tools and all my racing gear, including a huge air compressor bottle for filling my own tires.
Yeah.
I replaced the oxygen tank that they had with a regular, like a CO2 canister that I filled with air, and then I had a hose I could pull out.
That's what
cool.
Tom
I'd
needs
love to
for
see a
his,
photo
his
of that.
fishing.
I know.
They're already wired for electric.
Yeah.
So they've got a lot of them have inverters on them. They have a lot of DC, like 12-volt light power, and then they have AC power. They have lights all the way around them. They're great for backing trailers. The problem is you can't stand up in them. And I never had a problem with mine going to all these racetracks by myself because I didn't care. And then Alice started borrowing it. I don't know if y'all remember when she would drive the Jambulance.
Yep,
Remember that, Jane?
remember that actually.
And she hated it. Absolutely hated.
Uh-oh, we lost Greg. I feel like the Jambulance would be fantastic for Thomas.
So
I do think so,
am I back
too.
on? Because I lost.
You're
yeah,
back
I'll be
on.
back in.
I can hear
Okay,
you.
all right, yeah.
We should probably wrap
Zeke
up
moved.
and close soon since we're at
Oh,
9:15.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
So maybe like the
Am
5
I
minutes
still there?
closeout segment.
You're there, but your screen is frozen, but we can hear you perfectly fine.
All right. Oh, hang on. Here we go.
If you just remove your video and then put it back up, it usually fixes itself.
All right, hang on. I got to go over to this other screen.
I'm gonna remove him. No, he's still frozen.
Hang on. Did you just jump out and back in?
Sure. Try that.
Oh, he's
You're
back.
back.
I'm in. Okay. I just
You're
moved
back.
my browser to another window.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll wrap up. But anyway, the ambulance is cool, except for like it had these overhead grab bars, because like the ambulance crew, they might be sitting in there and hanging on. You stand up, you hit your head. So they're not totally practical, but it was dirt cheap and it worked for me.
Yeah.
She hated it with a passion, and got her where but it taught her to drive a big and heavy vehicle without being able to turn your head like you had to use mirrors. All right, so I'm going to wrap up real quick. The brake snubbing, we talked about that, right? Does everybody drive with their lights on, their headlights on? And I don't mean the automatic daylight G. It turns on when it feels like it, daytime running lights. But do you
Mine
know
doesn't
that your
have automatics. I have to turn them on manually, and I always turn them on.
So your trailer lights are on, right?
Yeah.
Really important.
Yeah.
Really important. You can't rely on the daytime running lights because they're not going to. A lot of them won't activate your trailer lights. And the whole thing you're trying to do is to get the attention of the person watching TikTok videos on their phone while they're going down the road. You know what I mean? So anything helps. So please, and I catch myself not doing it, and I'll look in the mirror and I'll go see the running lights aren't on. I'll in the daytime and I'll just turn my headlights on.
Yeah.
We're spoiled by the automatic stuff. A lot of people don't even know where the headlight switch is.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. Kenny says I always have my lights on when I haul. Good job, Kenny.
Yeah, I think you should. I mean, you can learn a lot from what you see tractor trailers do. You know, when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I don't know if anybody else has anything else they want to ask about or talk about. If you guys have any thoughts, but I really wanted to get to that braking thing,
Yeah.
It's so
because
hugely important, though. Like, and a lot of people don't think about it until you travel somewhere where there is really going to be a mountain or a big hill that you've got to traverse. You know.
Yeah. I've
yeah,
honestly I've called my dad so many times, like, going up or down a mountain and being like, "Hey, it's revving really loud. I don't think this is normal." And he's
Mm-hmm.
like, "It's a truck. It's normal." But for me, like, being in a big, 1-ton diesel dually, like, it's not normal to me, who's used to
yeah.
driving just like a regular little car all the time. It's always
Yeah.
silent. It doesn't make any noises. So, it's good to know that that's normal and that's the truck doing its job, what it was designed to do, and that's a major relief.
The truck doing its job, and if you're driving older stuff, then yeah. And now you know what I used to get. I used to get people going, "Ew, is there like blood in it or something from when they used it?" You know.
Here
I said
Greg
no,
is
but there's
with
a
his
lot. There's still a bag
tombstone.
of narcotics in the back that
You've got literally
Greg with his tombstones in his ambulance.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
sleeping with.
That's funny.
But the if you're driving an older vehicle, then it's possible that you are going to have to be aware of that over revving because you don't have all the fancy new electronics to help manage that for you.
Yeah.
But again, you're towing, right? I mean, we all do it. Probably shouldn't be doing 80 plus with our trailers and flying because we're in a hurry. We talked about mindsets the other day and just take it easy. But most vehicles, if you're driving 60, 70 miles an hour and you're doing everything right, you shouldn't have a lot of those problems with the braking. If you're driving an old gas Suburban from 1995, yeah, you might have to snub the brakes a little bit to keep it from getting up there, and you want to be gentle on the gearing down until you really know your vehicle where you can knock it down a gear.
Mhm.
But the Volvo, my little Volvo sedan, when I'm coming back from a certain part of Pennsylvania, I drop it down into manual third gear to get down these hills like that because I know what it will do that way, and I'll never have to really hang on the brakes. But with a tow vehicle and all that, if you gear down at too high of a speed, you can damage stuff. So you have to learn when that works and when it doesn't. That's why a lot of people like stick shifts because then you just get another notch. But you can do that with an automatic. There's no reason why you can't. And then I'll be done. We talked about the overdrive thing, and I said it kind of went away. Now these newer transmissions, where they used to be 3-speed with an overdrive, 4-speed with an overdrive, now they're 6-speed, 10-speed, 12-speed. So like in the Duramax, mine doesn't have an overdrive, but it has a 6th gear, and that is like an overdrive, but it doesn't have to be designated such because there's so many gears. They figured out finally that fuel mileage can come from always having the proper gear available, right? So if you buy a newer truck now, if you buy a new hauler now, there's a very good chance you'll have a 10-speed transmission in it, which is just crazy compared to not that long ago. And those things will take care of you. They'll do their job with braking.
So that you're telling me that that's what I need to buy Tommy next for his truck, because I need to buy him a truck apparently.
The 10-speed,
With a
3500
10-speed,
diesel
yeah.
truck. That's not an
Yeah,
ambulance.
it's
Not an ambulance.
you think of the prices of them, and we bought a pretty expensive truck a year or two ago. And when I was driving it home, I'm like counting in my mind the thousands here and thousands there and thousands here that it took to build the thing. I'm like, this really is a pretty good deal. I mean, if you really analyze it and what you're getting for all that money, people go, oh, 1,000, whatever for a truck. Yeah, but I mean, they're built well and they're built strong, and the interiors are crazy good, and all that costs money.
If it lasts us forever, fine. But
keeps
if
you
it's
safe, it's an investment.
That's
you
true.
just have to have that investment mindset with it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So I guess we're out of time, and we never got to the spring buying trailer and selling your trailer thing. So maybe someday, if you guys ever can stand to have me back again,
Greg part 4.
we'll have to talk about. I actually had a girl come to look at my trailer today, and she was such a classic example for a good conversation of a trailer buyer because she asked a lot of good questions and that. So maybe that will be a whole nother.
Yeah.
If y'all ever want to talk about that kind of stuff.
That's a
That's
whole
perfect.
segment. Yeah, that's super important, especially as people look to transition up.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then maybe how to sell yours
Yeah.
too, like what you currently have.
Yeah, yeah. I would love to know how to
Thank you so
market.
much for coming on. I really appreciate you guys holding
Sure,
down
no
the fort
problem.
too while I'm
Yeah.
traveling.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Awesome. So glad Genevieve could join us from her hotel room.
right.
All right, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you next week.